Hello, and welcome to episode 61 of My Dog Will Eat My Face. Today I feel inclined to share with my listeners what I see as the worst part of heart failure so far as I'm dealing with it. It, of course, has many facets and many negative consequences, of course. But this one in particular has been dogging me pretty badly over the course of months and months now. And that is actually just simply fatigue. One part of heart failure with your heart failing to pump appropriate fluids to the body's organs, you really suffer heavily from severe heart failure, or you can suffer heavily from severe heart failure and severe short of breath as a result of that. And that's kind of what I'm facing with nowadays. Well, I shouldn't say kind of. That is what I'm facing with nowadays, is just intense fatigue, where it's difficult to even get out of bed. It's difficult to do anything around the house. It's like pulling strings, really, to get anything done on my end. In fact, just 2 days ago, I spent the whole day in bed. Didn't get up at all, except to urinate and to get another beverage. But every time I got up, I was just dogged with fatigue and quickly went back into the bed and sure enough, fell asleep. I feel bad for the dog. He was very patient with me. He likes to go wherever I go, but he stood by my side or laid by my side, whichever it is, throughout the whole ordeal. So props to him. He's very loyal and very noisy, as you can hear him barking in the background at absolutely nothing. So there's a good sample of the dog. Anyway, so that's what I'm basically dealing with. And so I felt it incumbent upon me to do a podcast on it, to share what I'm going through with respect to this issue due to the heart failure and the ramifications of it, because I think some of it might be really surprising and some of it might be obvious. So I wanted to kind of share those with my listeners. So coming up in the first segment of this podcast, it will be kind of just the consequences, kind of the things that you could imagine even if you don't have severe fatigue. Then I'm going to dive into the not so expected consequences, and finally the consequences of those various consequences of the issue. So bear with me if I sound a little slow. That's because I'm exhausted. So please bear with me as I go through this and continue on to the first segment of this podcast. So, first of all, when one considers fatigue, I guess the following symptoms will be not surprising at all. There are days where I'm just incredibly sleepy. I feel like I can't do anything more than just to take a nap. And when I am sleepy, it results in awkward thinking, not clear thinking, and it's not really remedied until I hop in bed and go to sleep. It's nothing too out of the ordinary, I would think. Probably out of the ordinary, though, for someone who is hungry, unless they're starving and hallucinating or something like that. Because when I'm feeling this way, when I'm feeling the fatigue, it comes with the obvious issues of needing a nap, and nothing seems to wake me up. Drinking a lot of caffeine is about all I have to keep me awake. And I'm sure most of us have done that. I know I've done that before this whole disease really kicked in. I've had to do that prepping for a meeting and a conference call at work. When I stayed up all night preparing a conference call for the next morning, where I had to present to the VP. So it was a high pressure call, so I was not sleeping. Instead, I was working on the presentation. And I'm sure we've all had moments like that, if you're working, that is. Or were working. I think you all had moments like that. But that's pretty normal, I would say. But I get that with just the low fatigue, to where there's really no cause like that. It's not caused by something such as a presentation to my boss or something like that that's due. It's just caused by my own internal stress, as though it's not being alleviated. And that is an experience I'm having more and more of. I blame the kidney failure because the chemicals in my brain are just not being filtered out accordingly. I think they are partially, because there's some days where I'm very, very clear, but there's some days where I'm just losing my marbles. I'll get into that more later, though. But for those days where I'm completely fine, it all seems pretty normal. I'm allowed to be tired. I take a nap and then I feel better. No big deal. Sometimes just a 20-minute nap and I'm energized. And that to me is perfectly normal. And I definitely have moments like that. But let's face it, you're not listening to this podcast to hear the mundane moments of my fatigue and the common experiences that I have. I'm pretty sure you want to hear about the weird stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that in the very next segment. So now the not so boring stuff. The weird stuff that happens when I suffer from this heavy fatigue. Well, first of all, I definitely feel it, and it's a strange feeling and hard to explain. It feels almost like a burning sensation in the back of my head as it comes. Very subtle and light. It just feels like, not quite like a headache. It feels like, just like a burning sensation. And it's so subtle and distant. It's that in and of itself is tolerable, but what that's an indicator of is not. Because what that means is that my time is counting down before I basically get knocked out by myself for being awake. And that's the risk I run. See, if I'm tired, I don't just fall asleep. I don't just gnaw it off. I completely faint right where I am. Or if I'm standing in the kitchen, I just go down and hit my head on the counter or something like that. If I'm doing anything, just standing there or working on something, eventually it just totally craps out on me, and anything I'm doing is just wrecked. So when I get that feeling, it's kind of a warning to me, a warning sign saying, you better get in bed. And I do. So when I get that warning sign, I do. And thankfully I fall asleep. And when I sleep, it's about 2 hours to 3 hours after, a full night's sleep prior to that. So it's just very unusual, and it's reflective of the fatigue I have. I'm sleeping 3 hours extra than my normal, 8 hours of sleep. And I can tell that if everything went to crap, it would damage a lot of things that I'm working on. And I say that because it's happened before. I try to push it, and it just turned into a nightmare of just gibberish and things not making any sense, and me basically having to redo everything I did the day prior, and to certainly redo all the things that I did if I did anything, because more than likely it's not done right. So yeah, it's weird. I get that moment of warning, and then it hits, and it is just like I flip upside down with what is up and down in my life, and I get completely confused. I can't talk to people. I talk gibberish. I get a total psychosis state. I talk about being late for the train when there is no train. I basically dive into a total psychosis. And that's not good. I mean, it really is a total psychosis. And I don't want that, because I just don't want that. And that's what happens if I just ignore those signs. The symptoms will all then come unabated, and there will be no chance but time to erase them from my life and get rid of them at that point. So that's the problem. And then also, I'll combine this with how society treats it and I treat it. I get cut off. I go completely insane. And my family just recently had a meeting about that, because I lose my mind. And their question is, what happens if I lose my mind and I'm home alone, as I usually am? So it's quite scary. The lack of oxygen issue is very scary. It causes a lot of damage, and apparently a lot of damage to the brain. So that's my big scare. And there's really nothing I can do about it. I'm stuck. It has everything to do with the body just not getting enough oxygen for whatever reason. And the best thing I can do is lay down and sleep to sleep off the weirdness. And sure enough, I do. And like I said, I wake up like 2 hours later. So that is by far the worst case of this whole disease, is people not getting that. And me struggling to communicate and get things done, anything done, because if I'm in that state, my plans are completely bonkers. So that's the short version of what I'm dealing with in terms of the disease, for lack of a better word, that I'm dealing with. Well, when I consider the weird stuff, I've already disclosed a little bit. I think things are going on that simply aren't. I believe that I'm someplace else. Sometimes I think I even am someone else. Some examples include when my dad was visiting, I stormed out of my bedroom and said, "Get dressed and hurry up or we're going to be late to the train." And he just gave me the weirdest look, like, "What are you talking about?" And I said it with such clarity. There was no slurring, that someone does if they sleep talk or sleepwalk. There's no slurring at all. It was clear as a day what I said. So let's get our bags together. We gotta go to the train station. Other times have included. I was hosting a small dinner party here with some family, including my local sister. And I guess at one point I went completely nuts. I got on the floor and said something. I don't know what I said because I don't remember it. But I said something and was doing things that it was so bad that my sister had to leave. She couldn't see me like that. So I that's the other thing. When these things happen, I don't remember them. I don't remember what I was doing. Sometimes I remember a little bit, but most of the time I rely on others to tell me what the heck I was doing. So the family get-together event is still fuzzy to me because even when I ask about it, family members are reluctant, to say the least, to revisit whatever it is that happened. All I know so far is that I was on the floor and thought I was someone else. That's all I really know so far. So it can break out into a total temporary psychosis if I don't treat it. And that's the thing. The cause, let me talk about the cause and the treatment. The cause is the fact that my kidneys are so shot, they're unable to pump the bad chemicals in the brain out like they normally do, especially when you sleep. So the chemicals build up in the brain and your body ends up getting stuck with these chemicals, and that causes these events. And the other thing is when I get when I get warning that this is going to happen, I have to sleep right away, get into a bed. It's like my 10-minute warning. It's like the sirens before a nuclear disaster. To get into bed and go to sleep before I do something wackadoodle. And 90% of the time that works. If not more, almost 100% that works. Because my body does want to sleep when this happens. And there is a medication for it. I do take that. So even though there's a buildup of toxins in my brain, they prescribe a pill which counteracts the toxins and reduces the effect that they might have on the brain and the body. And so I do take that. And, that's just another pill, but it works generally. I still take it and do the other thing, which is go to bed. I don't hold back any punches. I don't want to risk it, just because of the weird stuff that I do. I am lucky so far. I haven't made any phone calls. I am lucky so far. I haven't said anything crushing to someone. Again, so far it's just goofy. I'm waiting for a train. Asking my sibling or my father to hurry up because we're going to miss that train. And I'm just in a different world when it happens. Totally different world. And when I talk, it's just with total clarity and precision. No slurring. I don't sound tired. I don't sound drunk. I sound precise. And trying to give fair warning that we got to get going. To where? I don't know. So that's some of the weird stuff that I experienced just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more that I'm missing. But those are the big things that happen when I get that burning sensation in the back of my head, and when I get the event of losing my mind. And God help me, I hope I never do it during a podcast. It'd be interesting. 1 minute I'm talking about Stoicism and Seneca, and then the next I'm talking about mayonnaise. But that's possible, that's scary. So if I do that, forgive me, and now you know why. If I do something like that. But I do review them after I record them, so hopefully I would catch an error like that. But if I don't, have mercy in your judgment. And that, again, is just some of the weird stuff that I experience with this condition. And it is connected to fatigue in that it's connected to sleepiness. And again, right beforehand, I feel strong sleepiness and fatigue just before it happens. So there's probably one huge example not many people experience. So there you have it. There's some of the experiences that I have under the conditions that I have. And I really focused on those, at least one that is odd condition that you would not otherwise expect. Of course, there's the usual things, shortness of breath, tiredness, and all that. But fatigue and sleepiness and fatigue leading to psychosis even are certainly frequent and are certainly up there as very common problems that I have with heart failure and kidney failure. And the psychosis problem is one I don't think many people would expect. But lo and behold, it is a symptom of the kidney failure. So it's unfortunate, but it's true. I really would like to think that I preserve my mind to the very end, but it looks like that's just not going to happen as the toxins increase more and more within my brain. So that's extremely unfortunate to me and quite depressing. So there's part of it. And then, like I said a million times already, there's of course the sleepiness, just the tiredness, and just legitimate just wanting to go to bed, just so sleepy and exhausted from the smallest of things. And that is a very common problem. Sleepiness and fatigue, that is our common problem with the diseases that I have. And I'm sure to some of you that's not surprising, but maybe I shared one of the symptoms, more rare symptoms, that was something you weren't expecting, which is the total psychosis. I certainly wasn't expecting that, so it was new to me, and maybe it's new to you. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this podcast up because I am quite tired. As you might expect, I have a lot of fatigue. And I want to avoid a psychosis, so I want to make sure I get my sleep. So it's nap time for me. But I thank you dearly for listening to this podcast. And if you don't mind, please be sure to follow and share this podcast with others so they might be able to listen into this online journal of someone who's dying. And maybe it's something that they would find interesting. And it's generally pretty short, so it could easily fit, I think, within a person's day. So, anyway, but more than anything, I really do thank you for listening to the podcast. that I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, that is the best contribution you can make, is listening to this podcast and sharing it with friends. That's the biggest things I could ever ask for. And I'm very lucky for you to listen in and share it with others. So, with that said, one, thank you, and two, I hope to talk to you next week, and I hope it's not gibberish and madness. Okay. Ciao for now.